Hello, everyone, and welcome to the BuzzStream podcast. I'm your host, Vince Nero, and today I'm joined by Matt Foster, the digital PR manager at Distinctly. How you doing, Matt? Thanks for joining.
I'm doing very well. Thanks for having me, Vince.
Yeah, so Matt and I connected a few days ago, but we've kind of been in contact for a long while. Kind of started me speaking with Alex Cassidy at Distinctly, who put together kind of these couple blog posts on using AI to create digital PR content. And they were kind of tests. Funnily enough, he did one about, it was Simpsons themed, and I'm a big Simpsons fan, so it really, piqued my interest. And I'll link to some of that stuff in the show notes. It's really, really cool. But this kind of sparked this conversation between Matt and I about AI, using AI at digital PR campaigns, but more broadly at an agency. And Matt and the team at Distinctly, Matt was a co-author of this new white paper called Integrating AI Processes into Digital PR. Before we get into it, I just want to remind everyone, like and subscribe, leave a comment, 5-star review, all that good stuff. The more that we do this, the more we share this stuff, the more I can bring in great guests like Matt to share their thoughts and expertise. So remember to like and subscribe. Matt, I would love to kind of get you to give just like a brief overview of why you decided to go into this AI, the white paper, but even more broadly, why was it important for you guys to integrate AI into the processes at Distinctly?
AI minefields, we might call it. Um, so, yeah, in terms of the processes, it's well, we decided it was better to start AI integration into the team fairly early on. Two parts to that, really. One part with the internal capabilities, so making sure that we're evolving our service and team empowerment, so the team knows what they're doing on these AI platforms. And secondly, to make sure that we're up to date with the impact that it's having on the search landscape with AI overviews. On the AI overviews front with the search landscape, we know that marketing teams and marketing professionals that I've spoken to, not just clients, but conferences and outside of the working day, we know that they come to agencies as the source of advice, the source of expertise, and the knowledge, kind of being at the forefront of that innovation and making sure that we understand the changes that are happening to the space, so we can advise on the best next steps. And I mean that's something that we're working with the wider Distinctly Organic team on, so understanding the AI changes of the AI landscape, but mainly with the first point for the internal development, which is kind of what we focused on for the AI white paper, which you mentioned at the top. It's really all about benefits around the productivity of the team and removing those kind of like admin tasks which might get in the way of the creative thinking, so we can improve our service and make sure we're delivering on quality. And I think that's something that teams are doing across the board. I'm sure there's definitely other digital PR teams doing it, other agencies doing it. I mean, what we found specifically is that it's kind of giving our team the power to innovate through using AI and providing access to the platforms and the fundamental knowledge. I guess to boil it down is we're teaching the team to fish, to use that old phrase. So yeah, that was kind of the reason that we went in head first, developed this. Started in early 2023 when the explosion kind of happened. That's kind of when we thought we'd get our acts together and start to develop this.
Yeah, so it seems like there's kind of a two-part goal from this. There's the empowerment of the team, but then there's also kind of like the knowledge that you can provide to clients on AI overviews, right? Like with AI overviews, I'm curious if there's any kind of major takeaways that you'd love to share, maybe some tips or learnings, because I don't think that the white paper itself really focuses too much on that, but I feel like that's a interesting thing. And I know we weren't planning on talking about this, but it kind of, sparked my interest as we're talking right now. it's changing every day, obviously, and by the time this comes out, it might be a bit different, but I'm curious if there are any specific things or new guidelines or ways that your team thinks about creating content that might be relevant to the changing AI overview landscape.
Yeah, sprung this one on me a little bit, Vince. But
Yeah, yeah.
no, that's still good. That's still good. That's what we're here for. So I mean, in terms of what it's changing, we're conscious of the way that it's changing reporting in reporting into clients and reporting our value. We know that it's opened up a new field of reporting where we're not necessarily just reporting on exposure in organic results, so share of voice in organic results. It means that we're now looking at the data coming from AI overviews and how much referral traffic we might be getting from platforms like LLMs, like ChatGPT being the obvious one, or Gemini, of course. So fundamentally, there we're speaking to clients, and we're starting to open up the conversation that this is opening up now. This is another metric that we're going to need to track, and there's a new traffic source coming onto the website when we're thinking about brands being linked in the AI overviews. But then there's another side of things when we're talking about the PR element to it specifically. It's not necessarily just links coming from the AI overviews. It's also the information that's being featured in the overviews, where we know that it's more likely to be informational content. And there was a little bit a few months ago. A good example is that we run data-led campaigns quite a lot for certain clients, because we know we can leverage them over a long period of time, etc., and it's useful to approach multiple angles from them. And with AI featuring this informational content, we're kind of opening ourselves up with this data-led study reports to being featured more in those overviews. So it kind of opens the question as to whether we move our priority towards these like report-led pieces of content, where we're trying to create newsrooms within our client website, rather than doing maybe the more fun, creative approach, maybe a fun landing page. Maybe there's a value difference between the two of those. I'm not saying one's right or one's wrong, but yeah, it opens that question. I suppose a good quick example of where it opens that up, just to ramble on for a second, is in one of the campaigns that we did, which was a data-led campaign, we put a press release out there to the news. It was featured in the news, and then it was covered by a competitor on a competitor website in their news section. And actually, we're ranking highly for a good relevant search term around the study. But in the AI overview, our competitor, because they've featured the press release, they're being summarized and linked to in the AI overview. So the question that raises is, should we be totally owning all of our output in terms of putting press material on our client website, as well as the on-site report, as well as the content? Or are there any intricacies to this that we can start to control? Or
Yes, Matt, tell me that. Just I want to make sure I caught that. So you publish it on your client website. Your competitor featured it in their blog or news section, and the competitor was the one that's showing up in the AI overview?
Yeah, it's a competitor who covered the news story.
Oh, got it.
So we promoted the content to press with a press release, got that covered as a news story, and then the competitor covered it in their news section as industry relevant news.
Right.
And then the competitor was featured in the AI overviews under a highly relevant search term.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the issue with syndication, right? Seen this a lot where you can get something syndicated, but then Google, even if it's canonicalized to, the original, Google will sometimes choose a new canonical. So say you publish something, get it syndicated, sometimes the syndicated post will outrank the original, which obviously is not great, but that kind of reminds me of a little bit of what's happening here. And yeah, I don't know if there is a great way to control that yet. It seems like it's just people are still trying to understand how LLMs work. And you and I actually spoke about this a bit before, but it sounds like I love this idea of the data driven PR these days. I mean, I talk about that a lot. I've seen that happen for us at BuzzStream and why I'm leaning into as much data as possible because the large language models, you read all the time that they're running out of content, right? They're running out of things to train the language on. And there's this idea of information gain, and you should be constantly, creating new information that the AI can pull out. So I love that. And I think in a way it can potentially tie into the second half of our conversation as well of the white paper itself. So let's jump over to that. I want to start again integrating AI processes into digital PR. This was a white paper that you guys did. There's kind of three sections, I think, of like the initial kind of onboarding, how you started it, and then you get more into what exactly you learned from it. I would love to get your kind of top level learnings because it feels like this is something that other agencies, other in-house teams can really learn a lot from. And I'd love to, yeah, just kind of get your take into what can agencies or in-house teams learn from this if you had to boil it down into a few kind of action items.
Yeah. So what can they learn from the AI white paper specifically?
Yes, yes.
I would say the number one learning from it is to encourage an ecosystem of everyday innovation. I would warn against the thinking that AI is going to be a new product output or a new service line or necessarily a new top to bottom way of doing something. I think with our learnings over the last year, we're finding that the real innovation, which is useful every day within our team, is happening within the team. So it's individual team members who have been taught to have a fundamental knowledge of how to use these platforms, of the output from these platforms, what quality output from the platforms look like. And then with that fundamental knowledge, they're able to go through their working day with the thought in the background that I'm doing this task, which is taking me X amount of time, but actually if I just consult an LLM, then I might be able to have a conversation with this AI machine, but actually to solve this issue, to complete this task in strangely a bit more of a humanistic way by having that conversation. So yeah, I think the main thing would be that is to really encourage that ecosystem of everyday innovation, make sure the team is up to a certain standard of familiarity with the platform.
So Matt, sorry to interrupt. I want to make sure listeners know when we talk about AI and LLMs that your team used. Are we talking mainly ChatGPT? Were you dabbling in Gemini, Perplexity?
So for the white paper and in general, ChatGPT is probably the most used across the team. In the early stages of adopting it with the team, we kind of just pushed everything that way. We pushed everything towards ChatGPT. There was always the conversations around Gemini started doing X, Y, Z, or Claude has started doing X, Y, Z. Claude is meant to be the better one for actual language output in terms of being more human. But in terms of the learning process, we found that just focusing on one, it helped to put the focus in one place with the team, and it could be consistent across everything.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like ChatGPT is also where most of the tools that you see are based off of, So it's the kind of idea that, and I was told this, my previous job before I started BuzzStream, I was working in an agency. We kind of had a similar kind of push to try to integrate AI into the systems, into the processes, I should say. And it was like, oh, well, we could use XYZ tool, but ultimately all of those tools are built off of ChatGPT and OpenAI. So better off just learning how that works and learning the prompts and that's what most of these tools seem to do is kind of take the prompting off of the plate. They have very good prompts set up. Yeah, so I love that. And one of the things that we talked about, I think in the white paper and you and I spoke about was, aside from the knowledge, right? Like your team learned a lot at the onset. But then there are some kind of actionable, like tangible results. And one of them you talked about was creating unique tools. That was one of the things that came out of it. And one of the ones we mentioned was the headline grabber tool. I'd love to hear just like a brief take on what that is. And then if there was anything else that kind of came out of it tool wise.
So yeah, absolutely. The headline grabber tool that was developed internally at Distinctly, and it was used. It's hosted on the Distinctly website, so anybody can access that. And really, it was created with the idea that we could create something for digital PR professionals to create or retarget headlines to different publications and different niches, and more generally, just to bounce ideas off. I think it was the thought process where instead of trying to reinvent the whole campaign, it's just the single element that we need to improve the efficiency of. So we know that PR teams are regularly retargeting headlines to different publications, whether that's tabloids or broadsheets, taking the top level. So how can we improve the efficiency of that? So yeah, it's accessible on the Distinctly website. And to be honest, when you were saying about the tools made out of simple prompts, when you know how it actually works, it's just a very simple prompt in the back end where the specific parameters were already edited for anybody in there. But yeah, if anybody's just coming onto AI and just learning how to use it, then it's a nice little tool to be able to change your outreach process.
Yeah, I mean, I've built plenty of these kind of custom GPTs, I think is what they call them, in ChatGPT now, that I'm finding myself getting more used to integrating that into my workflow. So, every time I create a podcast like this, like I will ask ChatGPT to write the description. I'll feed it, my whole transcription of our chat, and then with some time codes, pick out the time codes, write me a brief blurb or summary. You usually have to go in and tweak it a bit, but it's it just kind of is a shortcut, right? Like you don't starting to find the things that it does well, and it's that kind of stuff. But I'll also do, give me some headline ideas. And maybe they're not great ideas, but at least sparks something. It gets me there. And I love the idea that you kind of said, I forget exactly how you said it, but it made me think of like just having like a buddy, right? Like ChatGPT AI is like your buddy that you can just bounce ideas off of, bounce things. I use it all the time when I'm writing. It's like, how can I write this more clearly? Like what, just having another person in the room almost, who's can be smart, but also is kind of like a very basic just idea machine, right? I want to ask too, because I wrote this note down as you were talking. This doesn't seem now that AI is. I feel like when AI first came out, a lot of people thought, a lot of agencies especially, were like, "Oh man, this is going to streamline everything. We're going to be able to cut costs. We're going to be able to, have all these new service offerings." And it doesn't seem like that is the case, right? I mean, is that kind of what you gathered? It's not necessarily like a cost saving thing that's really gonna cut costs for agencies, and like maybe it's gonna cut down some of the time, but for the most part, like maybe it helps more with efficiency. But if anything, it just seems to be like will level up the quality of everyone's work.
Yeah, I think that's the main finding from it is the quality. But then, of course, agencies' product is is time as well. So yeah, it's probably somewhere in between, to be honest. Yeah,
I mean, have you've felt those gains, like time, you know, the people actually doing the work, do they feel like they're cutting down the time it takes to do tasks using AI?
I think there's an element of that. I think how I'd describe it is that individuals, professionals have more time to do the good stuff. It's the administrative elements, it's the admin elements, which ChatGPT, other LLMs are removing time from, um, which is only a good thing. It's only a positive thing because it means that we can be more creative. We can, like you say, we can improve the quality of the work. We can innovate on new service lines. We can serve clients better. We can have longer conversations with clients and really get into what what their core offerings are, which of course we do to a great extent anyway. But I suppose a very small example of that is the what do you call them now? So note takers from meetings. That very micro example of just being more present in a meeting instead of having to dip away and take notes, or have account executive or somebody else working on the account in those meetings taking the notes. Even if we don't change that format where there's a manager and an executive in the meeting, it means that with the meeting not with the account executive not having to take notes from that meeting, that they are learning a lot more just by being present and by being in that meeting. So it's those little elements where we are seeing the use cases for it, definitely. And it's just a case of making sure that it's integrated in the team, and it's integrated responsibly as well, because I think there's, taking the note-taking example as one, and sometimes there's going to be questions from clients on things like data security, as an example, with using AI note takers. So it'll often be, for those that have used it before will know, it's usually another individual attends the meeting which is named something weird, and the client might have a question with what's this guy doing?
Fireflies, or yeah, I've had fireflies. I forget the other one. Parrot.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there can be. It's about education at the end of the day, and it's about making sure that your policy is in place, so the use of these tools can work within a framework. But yeah, to get back to your original point, that there's definitely a long-term gain which we can see with how quality will improve from using these tools.
Yeah, that's a good segue to one of the other kind of takeaways that you had in the white paper, that I thought was really interesting, of using the tool, talking about kind of, I don't know if this was necessarily like a service offering, but it sounds like something that you use now in your processes or in your like a tactical piece. But this idea of using AI for media analyses. So you talked about summarizing media calendars from previous years to help kind of understand, maybe it's a specific industry, like what gets published, or you know, who's doing what are the big holidays, the trends, that sort of thing. Could you elaborate a little bit on that, because that's really interesting to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to cover it off from the very start, I've probably missold it slightly from the calendar analysis. That's clumsy wording, but I'll explain exactly what it is, because I think it's a really good use of AI. We found it very useful anyway. And the uses for it kind of crosses over with competitor analysis, which is another element which we spoke about as well. So media analysis and competitor analysis. And each of these contribute to an existing approach that we take, an existing, it's not necessarily a service line, but a product that we deliver. And it can generally be split into three elements being used by the team. So firstly, we've got the media analysis for thought leadership and reactive opportunities. Second, we've got the competitor review analysis, which is to optimize PR positioning, and it can also have website content benefits as well. And then thirdly, there's competitor link analysis as well. So all of which are leveraging competitor data to benchmark and improve what we can do for each client. So to actually get to your question on the media analysis side of things, really it's answering the question, where are competitors being featured in the press and for what topics? The approach for this is just requiring a basic prompt with simple information on competitors, brand name, team members acting as spokespeople, and we can speak to this LLM and ask to summarize media coverage, which features quotes from competitors, and present it in a format which we find is very important when speaking to LLMs. Otherwise, it will just spit out paragraphs. So yeah, asking them to summarize the media coverage and then look back over the last 12 months for insights on seasonality as well. So what articles are being covered when, where are competitors being featured in what months and in what publications. From that, we really just find that it removes the need for this deep dive data set analysis or spending time on backlink analysis tools, exporting into spreadsheets, almost needing a data scientist to take findings from it. It almost means that access to this information can be done almost as we're going through campaigns. So it doesn't need a competitor analysis every quarter or every month, however often you like to do it. It can be done by a team member who's actively doing outreach, and they can have a quick look. They can speak to the LLM to see how the competitor's doing it. How can we benchmark? How can we improve? And if we took the example, so what have we got from that? We've got the basic information on where competitors are being featured in the news over the last 12 months. We can continue that interaction with the LLM and ask it to, let's pull the headlines being used featuring these competitors. Let's identify the common phrases being used in headlines or in the articles that are featuring competitors. And then we can use these to try and replicate the common phrases in what we're doing. So if we know that it's engaged media in the past in this industry, it means that we can, okay, how can we use that and how can we better it? How can we go one step further? And really, if we're getting a slice of that competitor coverage over the next 12 months, as well as the work that we've been doing in the previous 12 months, then it just means that we're making those incremental gains in the industry. Reporting, clients care about competitors, let's say. So it's a double win on that front. So that's the approach to that.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. I mean, I would love to be able to get a snapshot. I feel like I've tried this with I'll export the anchor text or something of competitor backlinks, and I imagine you had to do a great deal of honing, the categorization of your tool, because that's one thing I feel like ChatGPT often can be all over the map. If I ask them, categorize these backlinks into the types of websites, some of them will be, they'll put them all in a bucket just called like general or something. And so, yeah, I imagine it's a lot of work going in the back end of that. But that sounds like a really cool tool. So the last main part before I want to get into kind of the latter half of this conversation of integrating AI, like some of your tips for integrating into the agency or, your team. But one interesting thing, and tell me if I got this right, was kind of using AI to prototype campaign ideas when you pitch them to clients. Is that something, did I get that right? Is taking that from the white paper?
Yeah. At a basic level, the details that we included from that is, I'm sure anybody working in PR or digital PR will have had a scenario where they really believe in an idea. They go to a client, pitch it into the client, and it hasn't conveyed. It hasn't quite landed. You know that it's a great idea, but maybe it's a bit too creative for them, or maybe, yeah, they just can't quite get there. So really all we were saying with that is using generative AI for specifically for things like imagery. If we can convey an idea better with the use of imagery, it means that we don't have to have somebody mock up the imagery or have somebody spend time on creating the imagery when it's not actually going to be used for a campaign. We need to look at quicker solutions to that. So generative.
I love that. And is that something that you use, like our graphic design, is your design team kind of at the helm of that? Though they're not, mocking it up, or is it the PRs who are kind of just feeding Dolly or whatever, Midjourney, whatever image generator you use?
It's generally the PR's lead in that. It's the people who are creating the slide decks and making that final pitch into clients. It would generally be those creating those. There would be a consultation internally in terms of, I don't know, can this be improved? But yeah, it's really one of those time-saving things, which also, like we say, with the improving the quality, we're improving the quality of the slide decks or the proposals which go to client to convey the idea better. And it's just that little edge might be the thing that changes it and means that gets signed up.
Yeah, I mean, I love that. As you know, worked at an agency for a long time, and that was probably the most frustrating part is when you do have a great idea and you just can't seem to get on the same page with the client for whatever reason. Or, sometimes you're looking for examples of something that exists, and that can take a really long time. Like you're trying to find a similar example, right? I run into that still with, BuzzStream content when I'm writing a blog post and I'm looking for, what is that one, piece of content that I saw that was similar to this in this industry. But yeah, being able to kind of have that shortcut to, digging around, I think that's great. Okay, Matt, let's quickly jump to kind of the second half of this. And there's a couple key things that really stood out to me about integrating AI into Distinctly. The very first thing that you did was surveyed everybody on kind of their knowledge level. And at the end, you surveyed again. Tell me a little bit about like why that was so important in this process of teaching the team about AI.
Yeah, so like you say, right at the very start, we surveyed the team, and it was a really simple questionnaire, really, to understand what skills were within the team already and where the gaps were. So what that enabled us to do was I suppose it's best described by when we were going into this AI initiative, we wanted to make sure that it was as team-led as possible, because we were aware that we were all learning together, that the world was almost learning together at this point. So there were going to be some people who've experimented with it already, whether that's to create an image or to maybe create an article or support them in whatever way. So we wanted to understand what skill sets were across the team. And where that really helped was the people who had already developed some skill sets just through experimentation. We could look to them to lead some of the training sessions across the team. It helped that it didn't feel like it was a top-down training. It was more of okay, let's learn off each other. So then when we get into the end of the first phase, which the first quarter, the first 3 months, we're targeting all being at relative zero. So we're all being at the same level, and we've all learned off each other for how to do each of these AI skill sets. And when we say AI skill sets, we can split it out into things like support in press release writing, image creation, all the different facets that you can imagine it can be applied to. So yeah, that's where we started off from, and that's where it was useful. The secondary benefit to it is when we came to the end of the second quarter, the second phase, when we'd gone through more structured workshops and more learning and team sharing, it meant we could survey the team again with the same questionnaire, and then we could start to figure out, okay, where's the understanding growing, where might there still be gaps, because there's always going to be some gaps in some places, but yeah, we could start to see the progression of the team from the survey 1 to survey 2, which was amazing to see. And we actually saw that the largest progression was among the executives in the team. So that was great to see. So what we'd done is we'd pulled everyone up to a good standard of understanding, which helped to lay the foundations to what I was saying before, where encouraging innovation across the team. We were then at a point where digital PR executives who are conducting the outreach and feeding back from journalists and building media lists, etc., they were the ones that had the skill set to identify where ChatGPT, other LLMs, AI could support in their work. So yeah, it was a really useful process.
Yeah, I really like that. That definitely stood out to me. I got a couple kind of quick hit questions here, but the one that is really standing out to me as I hear you talk about this, I put myself in your shoes when I was at an agency, a manager of a team. Time was always working against you, right? Like, for on the one hand, everything is based off of, billable hours, right? At an agency, especially an agency, billable hours. But even if you're working in-house, you have your work that has to be done for, the daily tasks of your job, right? You're writing content, you're pitching. An initiative like this, speaking candidly, could be tough to push through, right? Like, it could be tough to kind of motivate people to work outside of the bounds of their job title or their everyday duties. How do you fit that in? How do you motivate people to learn above and beyond to push, their roles? I'm sure, you have the benefit of like working with some great people at Distinctly, and I'm sure hiring goes into that, hiring the right people. But on a simple kind of billable hours level, like, is this something that you bill time toward, you're basically losing time that could be spent on agency work, right? To train your team. So talk to me a little bit about that. I feel like it's a big challenge for a lot of people in a lot of different industries and companies.
Right, absolutely. It's an investment in development at the end of the day, isn't it? It's making sure that we're providing the headspace in order to provide the training and for the team to go off and innovate and explore and do all that kind of thing. And I'm glad you mentioned about like the setup in the background, because that's absolutely true. Like, nothing really happens individually in the team without the company having a mindset of a focus on training and kind of integrating that with things like one-on-one meetings and line management and all that kind of thing. So firstly, nothing's going to happen if the back end's not in order. But yeah, I Distinctly as a whole, we're pretty hot on the utilization and making sure that everyone has a good balance between client workloads and internal activity, so training activity. And if we know that if we're not managing that effectively, then client activity is always going to take priority. So it is something that we want to manage, because we know that learning is really important. For the AI initiative specifically, time was assigned to each team member. Every team member had time each week to explore, to create, to try things out on AI, and we took a fairly open approach to it. Everyone had time each week, or at least they had time assigned at the start of the month. So where that time was spent wasn't really that important. We didn't demand that everyone spent a Friday morning on trialing AI. funnily enough, it was usually Friday that it happened, but I'm sure that's going to be the same for everyone. And the only ask that we really had from the team is away from this time assigned each week, we asked that anything that was found within that time, any learning that was found within that time, was put into a shared slide deck. And then we would go through that shared slide deck in person in a team meeting. And we'd talk about it. We'd talk about the learnings. Failure was totally okay. We had to make sure that we communicated that failure was going to be a part of this. Failure was a part of learning, I think was the actual phrase that we used. So sometimes people came into these in-person meetings and said, I tried this out. I tried X, Y, Z. I tried this prompt and then tried this communication with it. And actually what came out of it was a horrible disconfigured image that we wouldn't ever use for anything. But that's a learning. And sharing that learning with the team means that the team's then not going to go and try and use those prompts to create image, etc., etc. So yeah, we found that really important. And I suppose when we talk about motivation, there's sharing things in a team meeting is a good motivation, let's say. I think if there's the need for someone to share something, you don't want to be the person who's not sharing something. So
Right. I like that. Yeah. A little social pressure.
exactly.
Yeah. Well, Matt, I know you're a busy guy. I don't want to take up too much more of your time here. I think a good way to kind of wrap this up is to just get your take on AI's place and AI's role in PR in general for the future. We talked yesterday about, there's some news outlets using PR right now. I've even heard of Google paying publications to write fully AI articles as kind of like a test. I don't know if it's still going on. I haven't really heard much from it, but this was maybe 6 months ago or something. What's the place? I mean, agencies aside, just digital PR in general, where does AI go from here?
Where does AI go from here, specifically for PR teams? I mean, I think if we're looking at the wider ecosystem, we include an example of where journalists and news teams are using AI in-house to optimize their time. And really everything that we do at PR is leading from journalism to a large extent. We will go where the journalists go. We will be affected by what the journalist day looks like when the journalist wants to receive news. So if we were to look at it broadly, I think there's going to be more time for journalists to engage with PR for news stories on the whole. I think there's going to be probably even faster news cycles, which would be crazy to think of because they're fast enough already. But that's old man Foster talking. But I think journalists are likely going to have more column inches to fill. But I think if journalism develops at the same way that PR companies are, all the ways that we've developed in terms of optimizing our time, I think news companies are doing the same thing on their side as well. We know that journalists receive hundreds of emails each day, and that for me is a very simple element where news teams can optimize their time in working through those emails and having the time to engage with PRs. If I was to explain this more fully, in the white paper we talk about NewsQuest, which is a UK local news network, and we reference insights from Jodie Doherty-Cove, who is the head of editorial AI at NewsQuest. So the fact that they've got a position like that itself means that, of course, they're moving forwards, they're experimenting with these kind of things. And Jodie's said over the last year or so, they've talked about using a news creator tool, which they say is similar to employing AI as a hyper-efficient copywriter and using it to transform information from the journalist to create first drafts, which can then be verified and finalized for the journalist. So being fed data from the journalist, create the first draft and coming in. And if we think of that from a PR perspective, The question is more, how can we be the ones to provide this NewsQuest News Creator tool with the data to create that first draft?
Yeah.
And actually, at the moment, nothing's really changed. All that's changed from our perspective is the journalist has more time to read these emails that they're sifting through, to then feed this news creator tool and have an article come out at the end of it. So yeah, essentially, we're, as PRs, we're still connecting with humans as journalists on one side, and then the journalists just have more time to delve into their stories, to source more reliable quotes, or to source more interesting data to support that. So
More time to do the good stuff, I think
exactly,
is how you put it earlier.
that is a full circle moment, isn't it? But yeah, that's basically. I think things are heading that way. There's time optimized from the journalist side of things, and I think that it's only going to give PR teams more time to engage with that. And we haven't even opened the question on thought leadership and appearing in AI overviews, whether helpful content updates, whether we need to push forward our thought leadership, whether we need to push forward our clients as thought leaders in the industry, and all that side of things. I think digital PR is in quite a unique space at the moment, where it's connecting this AI development to what's changing in the SERPs and what's changing in news publications as well. So it's just about understanding what's happening and making sure that we're able to connect the dots for the clients that we work with.
Yeah. And I'm glad you didn't go the other route of, how AI is going to destroy journalism and the media and fake news and everything. But let's keep it positive. I think there are a lot of positives that can come from this. And, as long as you're staying educated and in the loop of what is happening, I feel like there's always positives to take from this sort of thing. So I highly recommend everybody check out the white paper from just the Distinctly team, integrating AI processes in digital PR. I will link to it in the show notes. I'll link to the headline grabber tool and anything else that we mentioned here. You can find Matt. He's on LinkedIn. He's most active there. But you can also check out the Distinctly website, where, Alex Cassidy's original articles that kind of prompted this discussion, you can find there. A big thank you to Matt Foster, again, digital PR manager at Distinctly. Thanks so much, Matt, for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Vince. Much appreciated.
Yeah, and just big reminder, like, subscribe, leave some comments, 5-star review, all that good stuff. If you have any questions for Matt, like I said, comments are probably the best way to get at him there, or you can reach out to him in LinkedIn. But I'm sure Matt would be happy to answer any of those questions coming into the YouTube comments or Spotify comments. I realize you can do that today too. So thanks again for watching. Thanks again, Matt.